So I remember doing things like Jimmy Kimmel, James Corden, things from my bathroom, and which was a really bizarre time in my life. I never thought that I'd be singing on the toilet, but that's what happened.
Didn't you just do a show a couple of days ago or something like that?
No, I mean, I did a show a few months back at Coco, which is in Camden, another sort of famous place in London for music. And I performed all the new songs, and God, it felt good. You know that
Yeah,
I
that's what I
love.
was wondering about. Like, what was that feeling after not being able to do that for so long?
You know what? It was quite scary actually, because I didn't know. I was like, can I still perform? I just didn't. I wasn't really sure if I actually still had the gift, and it took me a couple of songs to get into it again. But when you're performing night after night, you just become this performing like magician, and you just can do it, and you almost like become this persona that just as soon as you're on stage, you switch it on and you're just there. But then you kind of, when you haven't done it for a while, it kind of breaks the spell, and you have to get back into it again and believe in yourself again. And so luckily I did 2 nights. In the first show, it took a while to get into it. By the second night, I probably have the best reviews I've ever had of those shows, because, I was just so ready to come back.
What's the hardest thing to sort of reactivate? Is it like breath control? Is it like stage presence? Is it stage fright? Is it tuning? Like, what is it?
It's like, I mean, I always have my lyrics on stage on a prompter, just because I get so not nervous, but like I get so anxious. I never get like stage fright or stage nerves, but I get anxiety, which kind of gives me this brain fog, which then sometimes I'll just be so in the moment that I'll forget lyrics. And so I've always got those there. But then I think it's just like playing and singing at the same time, playing electric guitar and just like, you've got to like find I don't know, like for some reason I get so embarrassed messing up on guitar. I don't know why. Maybe it's because like I'm a female guitarist and everyone's like expecting me to mess up or something. But I think it's those bits. But generally, like, I don't know. I'm good at tuning, and I don't ever use autotune, any of that stuff. I quite like little mistakes. They make it more interesting.
My understanding on this album is that it's like intentionally a joyful record. Like, I want to say intentionally not a personal record, though. I heard you say that one time, and when I listen to the lyrics, I have a hard time with that. But talk to me a little bit about it being sort of an intentionally joyful record.
Well, like when I write very personally, I might, there might be a bit more kind of, might be slightly more cryptic, slightly more kind of unique to me, my situation. I might refer to things in my own life that people might not necessarily understand at first. Whereas this is definitely more universal, in that even when I'm writing about, heartache or, cure for love, just saying I don't need a cure for love anymore. I realize that I can just dance on my own. I don't care about having somebody. I feel like this album was the album where I got to come out of the pandemic and just really escape into this world of, I don't know, love and sensuality and sexuality. And just, I loved the idea of kind of dancing, I don't know, in outer space on another planet somewhere. And, really, really all of us just wanted to move away from the pandemic and move on and get into another space. And didn't seem like anybody was in the mood to write ballads, which I've done a lot of, and it's exhausting. Singing those songs night after night, it can take its toll on you. And so, God, it was refreshing to play the new songs, because I just felt like I could concentrate on being a vocalist and just enjoying myself on a different level.
What do you mean playing like ballads and heavy songs night after night can take a toll on you?
It's just heavy. The reason I became a songwriter is because, I mean, this sounds so simple, but I just feel things a lot. And I've been, I feel like since I was really young, I've been affected by things. And so I'd write about them. And I've been writing lyrics recently, for maybe a later album. And I'm just picturing like singing them live. And I'm already like feeling emotional, thinking, about, God, how am I going to sing those lyrics night after night? Because I think initially, it's quite a lot, and it's quite a lot to kind of to sing them out loud to people publicly. And
Stuff
then,
about heartbreak, or stuff about like anxiety, or stuff about like stuff you're going
yeah, like
through. Yeah.
anxiety took over my life completely. It was debilitating, and it really affected every aspect of my job and being a mom and all those things. So it's definitely something that I'm gonna start, singing about. But because it has affected me so profoundly, obviously, like singing those things is gonna at first be quite sort of daunting, because but a lot of people suffer from anxiety, but it is like the loneliest feeling in the world, despite like the majority of people now experiencing it.
What did you, I did CBT, like cognitive behavioral therapy.
Mhm.
That really helped me out a lot with mine, and some meditation and stuff. What did you do?
Yeah. I also did that. I think, God, it was so important to speak to someone and not be afraid to cry as well. I feel like crying is there's still a bit of a like stigma around just crying, but it actually apparently releases, this may be rubbish, but I heard that it actually releases cortisol. And when you're really high in cortisol, you're super stressed. It takes its toll on you physically. It's like one of the things that like keeps getting released when you're anxious, and you don't want to have high cortisol. That is not a good place to be. So like things like that, just feeling like you can release, feeling like you can be really open, and when you get intrusive thoughts and when you get those things kind of creeping into your brain, you just have to separate yourself from thoughts. And last night, for example, I was saying to myself when I couldn't sleep, like, you are not your thoughts, you are not your
Yeah.
thoughts, and
Yeah.
separate, letting those thoughts come in and just like being like, oh, that's a nice thought, and just letting it go back out again, and not just like becoming completely absorbed by them.
I mean, so that's so funny. I was doing that on the way to this interview. I was doing that in the Uber on the way here, going, "Hey, come on now, Tom. You're not your thoughts. It's okay. You're all right,
Yeah,
buddy. It's okay." You know.
exactly. And yeah, your body is going to keep on, your body's healthy, you're fine, but then your thoughts can make you feel like you're not fine. And you just have to remember they are just thoughts, and they are a combination of things reactions to things. Thoughts are often built from things that weren't real in the first place. You make shit up in your head a lot. We all do. And so the thoughts that you are creating are ones that are built on things that perhaps weren't there in the first place. And so you really don't need to take them that seriously.
I know, but with all love to you, I mean, it's not for me. It's just my thoughts, and like the thoughts of the people listening to the show. I worry about, the imaginary people listening in the show, and the imaginary, people who I would like react to on social media that I try to avoid. For someone
Yeah.
like you, Ellie, I mean, you got to deal with the entire. I'm trying not to curse here. The entire like British press system talking about you. Like that's not going to
Yeah.
help you with the like, oh, it's only my thoughts part.
No, but then I'm like, who are these people writing these stories? Then I'm such an empath. I start thinking about, I try to imagine what the person writing them is thinking. And, I try and think of them as a human and thinking, God, this is their job and they've been told to write. Whoever it is at the very top is telling these people to write this trash. And so I think, like climate change, like all the things that I care about, there is always one or two people genuinely, like a collection of people at the top of all of it that can from there, just from there can change everything. And it's the same with like press and media. Like, unfortunately, we've been conditioned now to want these things, and if we don't have them, if we don't have a gossip from someone, if we don't hear about so and so's personal life, we feel unsafe. We feel like we feel like we need this information, otherwise it's just like nothing's right in the world. I need to just make sure that everyone else is dysfunctional to make to get on with my life. It's just one of those things. And so once you realize that, you really don't have to take it seriously at all. There are points where I understand why people have taken measures to ensure that their privacy is kept the way it should be, because it's dangerous. There are points to get to where it is dangerous for people in the public eye. And people have families, they have children. Now I'm a mother, I understand that.
You
But
have to be worried about some legitimate safety stuff. You have to be worried about that kind
yes,
of stuff. Yeah.
yes. I mean, like, my privacy has been breached, not kind of like in writing, but like at my house and things like that. And so yeah, there are genuine security things. But when it comes to like gossip, I've been doing this for such a long time. I'm used to it. I find it quite funny. I just saw a video on TikTok of a celebrity singing like comments on a news outlets where, you know, I have people like comment on articles and they're like singing along to the comments about them. And it's funny, so you know, when they read out the tweets about them, you kind of just got to laugh and think, who is writing that? They can't be that happy. You know, they have to feel like that is the way they operate, and that is what
Yeah.
they're taking up their time doing. It's a bigger question.
I mean, maybe there's meaning there too in the record. That the record is so unabashedly like joyful and loving and not that there weren't moments of introspection when I was listening to it. Like with what was the song with Like a Savior, when I listened to
Yeah,
that song, like certainly, do you remember writing that song?
I do, and we were laughing when we sang the chorus. We thought, this sounds really good.
Like a savior out of the dark.
And it just sounded kind of like, what is the word where like we sort of weren't taking ourselves that seriously, but it ended up just sounding the way it should have sounded. Like it wasn't a joke. It wasn't just like silly, but it was like when you just like let loose and you just really write what's supposed to be written. Whether, you know, somebody might have come in and said, you're singing like a savior, danced into my life. Like, what is going on? Like, out of context, that just sounds a bit, I don't know, a bit over the top and religious and strange. But then when you put it to the music, you know, it was giving me like Dolly Parton for some reason. It was giving me like Fleetwood Mac. It was giving me ABBA. And so I was like, you know, these are all great references. And so we just really enjoyed it. And the idea that somebody can just dance into your life on the dance floor and just save you from all the bad things, you know, it's a nice fictional scenario that we got lost in for a while.
Right, and when you are surrounded by anxiety and stress and all that stuff, that dancing itself can be.
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking to, who was I talking to? Carly Rae Jepsen was talking about that the other day, where she was talking about when she was a kid, like just taking these kind of, her family would take all of the tables out of the living room and sort of like dance just to sort of like release the tension that was happening. Or this great artist Debbie Friday told me the story that she was raised in this sort of like religious household, and she would like escape to these underground clubs and just dance in order to find, you know, that idea. Do you remember like in your early years finding that sort of freedom in dancing?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I grew up in a teeny tiny house, but I was lucky enough to have, that's why I have such an affinity with nature, because I got to go and literally run around the fields when we weren't getting like told off by the farmers. We would just like run around, jump up and down off the bales, you know, the hay bales. And we just had like, that was my freedom. That was why I have such a deep respect for the natural world, because that was my, you know, I had one big garden to just mess around in. I could even just go and sing because I knew nobody could hear me, so I could really let loose. And that was kind of my freedom. You know, it shows on this album. You know, I love to write. I find writing pop records just such a cathartic thing, because to get to a point where you've made a sort of perfect pop record, or what you think is perfect, takes, just because it's not like uber personal and deep and introspective, it doesn't mean that it's, you know, like work. And also, you know, I was watching a video of Calvin playing Miracle the other day in Hong Kong, Calvin Harris, yeah. And oh my God, every single person at that show sang along when he started Miracle. And that, I realized that I was like, oh, that's really the biggest thrill that I can get. And other than, you know, watching my son do things for the first time, I'm like, that is just such a thrill. So, you know, and those songs are the ones that everyone's singing along to. And that just to get to that place where you've written that song feels like you've really achieved something, you know?
Yeah. On that, I wanted to ask you about. So this is a Canadian show, and I think they'd take my passport away if I didn't ask you about this. Back in 2020, you put out this really beautiful version of Joni Mitchell's song "River," and it was at the end of a 5-year hiatus for you when you hadn't been touring or releasing a lot of music. And my understanding of you, limited as it may be, was that was a time where you were dealing with a lot of the stuff we were just talking about, anxiety and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Why Joni? Like, what did singing Joni's music bring you to help you get out of that?
Oh gosh. I mean, I remember the moment I heard Joni sing for the first time, and the first song I ever heard was Blue. And when I heard that blue, Songs are like tattoos, I've been to see before. And I'd never heard anything like it. I just didn't grow up listening to Joni or Joan Baez or even like Bob Dylan, Fleetwood Mac. I grew up listening to like dance rave music because that's just what my parents were into, and my uncle and anyone that was around me. It was just a culture thing. And so to hear that voice, as someone that was just starting out as a songwriter, and then to hear probably the most like deeply personal, and I'm sure so ahead of what was allowed for a woman to write then, it just completely moved me and took me in a different direction, and oh my goodness, I got to sing for her at her what is it what they have in DC? I forgot what it's called now.
You sang at the Gershwin Prize for the Library of Congress. You sang Big Yellow Taxi for Joni Mitchell.
I did, and I sang to Joni, and I sang to the president.
Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? You pay paradise, put up a parking lot.
And honestly, I'm going to say it. This was not the song that I would have chosen to sing, because I'm not sure that I can do that song enough justice. But that's the song that I was given, and I wasn't going to turn it down because, how could I turn down singing to one of my idols? And so I did. And it was probably one of the greatest honors of my entire life for her to be applauding me. And then I got to see her afterwards and talk to her. And
oh, tell me about that. Tell me about getting to talk to her and hang with her afterwards.
oh, she was just incredibly humble and gracious and beautiful, and still so physically beautiful. And just, I mean, one of those moments God, just feel like, just totally surreal. Like imposter syndrome kicked in straight away. And I was like, why am I here with Joni Mitchell?
What's the thing you most remember from that night?
I just remember her like being emotional when I was singing it, and also her just telling me that I did. I can't remember exactly what word for word what she said, but she said I did a good job, and I did it really well, and God, it just blew my mind. The whole thing just blew my mind.
But back to the
I
first
also sang
question.
with Stevie Wonder on stage that night. That was another thing that just kind of happened.
It's a Canadian show. We're more excited about Joni, to be honest. No,
Of course.
no, I can't. I mean, you sang with Stevie Wonder. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable. But let me go back to the question, because I think that there's and maybe this is how I close things off. I think there's a parallel to be made. You were telling me how coming out of the pandemic, coming out of this stress and all this anxiety and all this kind of heaviness you were writing about, and all this heaviness that was required when you were singing all these heavy songs, you write this really wonderful kind of not impersonal, but personal in a different way, dance record, which allows everybody to dance and let go. And when you sang River, which is another, again, a piece of music, to me that seems like it was meaningful in that you end your hiatus, you end your sort of mental health hiatus, you end your anxiety hiatus with River. Do you remember why that was the song, why that was the thing that got you out?
I remember choosing this song because, I guess it resonated with me in particular at that time, where she sings, "I'm so hard to handle, I'm selfish and I'm sad." And I'm pretty hard to handle, I'd say. and I think there are some songs that when you're singing somebody else's song, you can slightly escape into it, because you can almost get away with whatever's going on in yourself, and kind of put yourself into somebody else's shoes. But then when you're kind of feeling it, I guess it's like an actor playing a role that sort of talks to them, where they can really, really put their everything into that character at the time because of the way they're feeling. The same with a song. When I sing a song, I don't sing it lightly. I don't just sing along to it. There's a lot that goes into my voice, and I think that's one of the reasons why I have a fan base, is because they get that my voice isn't just about vocalizing. There's so much more that goes behind it. And so I knew at the time that song, that I was going to be able to give it my all. And I think I did. I hope so anyway.
You did. It's a really beautiful record. I love getting the chance to talk to you. Thanks so much for making the time.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.